So, topic for this session is the forgotten art of hiding data in Active Directory and how adversaries could use this against you. But a little bit before that, a little bit about my person. That's who I used to be. That's who I have become. so much about identity fakes, yeah. But a little bit of a timeline there. I've been in Hewlett-Packard, HP person, more or less most of my life. That timeline from 96 to basically 2021 has been an HP life. Of course, HP has reinvented itself all the time, yeah? HP turned to HP Invent. In between that time, that's where I was 12 years Microsoft MVP for directory services. And it's really, you get that through experience and talking at conferences, directory experts conferences, whatnot, from the experience that you gain in projects and helping big customers to actually deploy stuff. That's where that came from. HP split up and split up again, and then it was time to make a change. That's why I'm here now as a principal technologist at Semperis, responsible for the EMEA market, but of course helping out globally wherever it's required. So, as I said, the topic is the forgotten art of Active Directory, hiding data in Active Directory. It's nothing new. Everything that I'm talking about here today is technology that existed basically since AD is out. But it's also the problems that existed since AD has been, put to market, because the biggest problem that we have out there is the default visibility of objects that are available for an intruder to do reconnaissance on. Active Directory is right in the middle, and Alex Weiner talked about this before. The whole ransomware doesn't have to be ransomware, can also just be espionage, but the ransomware is what really hurts you. Yeah. Not to say espionage wouldn't, yeah, but you might not know that somebody is there. But whoever gets in is going to try to go as a next step after they've done phishing or whatever way they've gotten into your network. Active Directory is in that path to tier 0 dominance in getting permissions to actually get to your real data, to actually get to where the attackers want to get to, be it for espionage or be it to take down systems. Active Directory in 80%, some other people say 90% of the time, is in the middle of that path. How would it be cool if we could make that at least harder for the intruder to get there? Because what is an intruder at the beginning that they come in? What's an intruder going to be? Hopefully he's not going to hit the jackpot of a domain admin browsing on a domain controller, right? And then clicking a phishing link. That would be heaven for an attacker, but that's not typically what happens these days. What happens is that any one of your users could click on something, a new 0-day out there, and they're on a box that they can then utilize, but that user at that time is a normal user. We call them an authenticated user, a domain user. We couldn't call them what you want, but not necessarily a privileged account. Again, that would be bad if an admin would behave that way. So at this stage, they haven't gotten that far yet. And you have to make it hard for them to get through that stage to domain dominance. And that is, for most companies, way too easy once somebody's here to then get and breach your Active Directory. And I'm giving you some tips as to how you can do that. So what is it with that default permission that I keep touting is a little bit of a problem, that greatest visibility. Now, funny thing is, look at that screenshot of that name of a group that's called pre-Windows 2000 compatible access group. Yeah, and that is filled by default. And check your environment. Unfortunately, most customers are still set up this way. Most companies are still set up this way, having authenticated users inside of that group to make them compatible with something that existed before Windows 2000. Windows 2000 being the operating system with which Active Directory was released. Yeah, of course, that means Windows NT compatible. Yeah, and what that translates to is that that group, you see here the permissions granted at the root of each of your domains in your forest, yeah, it's granting read access to who is using inet.org portion. I haven't found other than universities, companies using that, but it's group objects and user objects are granted full read permissions. You're like, oh, it's just read, right? It's just read, who cares? Well, read on the complete object. And that's the key. It's like the NT domains back then didn't have an attribute level permission model. It was an object level permission model. So these permissions are granting full permissions to read anything on an object, be it security related or not. Group memberships, user account control that controls all sorts of sensitive settings, like if a user has a password or not, or requires a password or not, or when the password was last set, and all of that. Yeah. So that doesn't mean that authenticated users, I didn't sort that list here, but it still has lots of other permissions. If we look at a user object by default, a user object, every object has default permissions, and a user object still has, for a normal user, lots of other access rights. We're going to have a look at that a bit later. That fully allows your users to normally work and see most of what you want to share in an environment without all the, let's say, sensitive stuff. And why does that matter? What you're looking at here is the group still populated. There's a user, and I'm looking at that user as an attacker. An attacker that does not have privileged access yet. That means as a normal user, with this, I can read everything. Everything that the user has, including user account control, including when did it log on last time, when was password last set, and whatnot. Yeah? Sensitive information that's extremely valuable for the intruders to understand, what can I actually use for lateral movement and whatnot. If you take that out, that whole list is the other default permissions that authenticated user still has, which is still a lot, yeah, but no more, at least not that sensitive data in here for them to view. Huge difference. Now, what I'm not saying is that when you get home after the conference, maybe Friday morning, worst case, or even worse, on Monday morning, go and rip out that authenticated users from the pre-Windows 2000 compatible access group, because some of your apps might simply rely on that permission. You do need to do a bit of testing, quite a bit of testing, before you're able to rip that out. That should have been done early on in the project when a system was deployed, but it can be done still today. There's not many applications that need that level of permissions. Simply, there isn't, yeah? But you still want to test it. It's nothing that you just rip out. Of course, you can easily undo it, yeah? Still something that you want to test thoroughly. An example that I've ran across was, I think it was Ivanti, something like a user profile management solution that would need to write back and read information like where's the home drive of the user and that type of stuff. Again, sensitive stuff that not many applications need to read, but that needed to be granted the permissions then once this was ripped out. Certain applications need that. Monitoring applications, they would also, the server or the service account that monitors Active Directory, you'd add them to that pre-Windows 2000 compatible access group to grant them the rights. That's fine, but don't grant it to everyone. So you can definitely fix this. But this one is, let's say, a bit harder to fix. The next one, much less impact in terms of your applications, but much larger impact in terms of making it hard for the intruder to see your privileged objects. This is the admin SD holder, and I've mentioned it in a few comments when we discussed the other days already, that this is an object that is basically a template. It's a template that's actually stored in the system container of each of your domains, and that is a template that's stamped onto your privileged accounts, domain admin members, enterprise admin, whatever the operating system considers privileged. because that's limited. It doesn't consider all of your objects that should be seen as privileged as such. In any case, look at that permission, and this is inheritance is disabled, which is correct. This thing is trying to basically hinder other permissions that you might have delegated out to at the root of your domain, let's say to your help desk accounts, to help desk admins, to reset passwords of everybody. Most companies have such a group, to reset passwords, and some actually do it right at the top of the domain instead of like at an OU level. And if this solution wasn't there to protect your most critical accounts, like domain admins, etc., then if inheritance is enabled, that help desk user could also reset the passwords of your tier 0 objects, your domain admin accounts, etc. So that's why that exists. But what it still has also in its template is that nice pre-Windows 2000 compatible access group, why, and authenticated user. Full read this time, not just down to the specific attributes that a normal user has. So even more permissions granted to authenticated user to read group memberships of domain admins and whatnot. Why? It's not required. Your apps do absolutely not require that, except for the management apps of your environment. I would bet that none of your business apps require to read who's a domain admin. It's like the total exception. Again, a change easy to do and easy to undo should it be required. We're going to have a look at what that actually means in terms of seeing this. Now let's see if we can switch around. This worked. So what we're now looking at, I've already collected the data. I'm logged on here on this machine as a normal user, nothing special. Actually, I might as well show it here because it's just faster. I think that is this window. Exactly. This is, I'm just to charge you, just believe me that is it. For something else, I also have this admin window. We'll get back to that later, but this is where I've logged on as an administrator. So I'm literally just a normal end user, nothing powerful. And I've scanned with our Forest Druid tool, I've scanned the whole forest for sensitive relationships between objects. I've only locked down, this is actually two domain forests. I've only locked down the one domain, the root domain, and not the child domain. Let's have a look what that actually means in terms of attack surface when we basically check out each of these. Actually, might as well have a look at the one that's not locked down first. Attack paths for my child domain that I haven't locked down. So let's say here, domain admins, everything is visible. Because I can, as a normal user, see all of this. Like who's member, how do I get it, how do I get to it, and whatnot. Very, very easy, And plenty of other attack paths are available to me in that environment. Let's have a look at the other one. This is what I can see. I can still see stuff as that authenticated user, that there's some admin account has permissions to a domain controller as an owner, and that is a member of some SID. If you were able to read that, that is the domain controllers group. That's also not visible to me anymore. So it's really difficult for me to make that out. And to make it more clear from a UI perspective, because most people are still using some computers to manage, this is the root domain that I've locked down with that, taken the permissions away from admin SD holder. And I see those objects as unknown. They're basically not readable for me. They're protected. The intruder could also not read them. Now that doesn't mean that you couldn't do the same protection, like take away authenticated users from some of those other relevant objects, like DNS admins and others that would be something that you'd want to also protect again from the bad guys. So, and Forest Druid basically helps you to understand what is actually visible or not. So that's just a quick view into that. So basically, we've just gone through this. There's a few cool free tools out there that helps you to understand the environment, the risk of your Active Directory, and lots of these are also used by intruders. Of course, we're happy. I haven't yet seen our tools out in the field as being used to find the weaknesses by the bad guys. I'm sure it'll happen because that's just what they do. They use any free tool. But I'm looking at this now with, in this case, I'm not showing it live, but what we've just seen, the intruders typically use sharphound. It's basically the command line equivalent to reap the information from Active Directory and then analyze it on a different system where they copied your AD data from their command and control system, and that's bloodhound to actually analyze it. And then when they go, without you changing the permissions, when they go and then using what we've just done in Forest Druid 2, they see all of that. They can also use the capability, the functionality, find shortest path, and there you go. They see all that information. How do I get to that important data that I need to crack? What's my path towards your domain dominance? If you've removed that default read, as you should, again, easy thing to do, then nothing is returned. Again, it's just a step to make it harder for the intruder. There's still always other elements that an intruder could use to try to gain access and take over your Active Directory, but a lot of those steps are, let's say, making more noise in your environment, need to leave much more traces that hopefully your security system would pick up. So how would you go at it to actually perform that hardening? It's fairly simple. As already mentioned, admin SD holder is located in the system container in each of your domain of your forest. How many have multi-domain forests here? Yeah, okay, so these are things that you do for each of your domain in the forest, not just one setting, of course. And then, of course, I already mentioned that you want to have perform inheritance enabled. And then I recommend it. It's not something that you must do, but it's certainly something that makes sense. Create another group that you grant access to read, and you add that to the template so that you have a control without needing to change the template all the time. Yeah. So that way, it's easy to add whoever you need to then actually read that environment. And technically, you could put authenticated users back in there, but this is not the brightest idea. Still, possible. You shouldn't be surprised if your the template that you have for admin SD holder is much bigger, because I haven't deployed Exchange in my environment. Exchange blows up everything. Yeah. Also the template with the permissions that it grants, and depending on what editor you might have used in the past to update something, that would have already collapsed that, let's say, this list of permissions from that DACL down to a single one, because this is basically double. Yeah, so there's read, yeah, and those other permissions that are then collapsed into a different view. So, and then of course you add that group, you remove those other access control entries that I just said, and that's it. And then we basically have already seen that screenshot live by looking at the environment. Doesn't look that pretty, yeah, because of all these unknowns, yeah. But the cool thing is, of course, that is also what it looks like for the bad guy. He can't get at it. Now, what about making it even less visible that these objects even exist? Anybody in their environment using the so-called list mode, list object mode? Has anybody heard of the list object mode? Yeah, a few, that's good. So this is actually sad that this functionality in Active Directory hasn't been enabled by default, but there's a reason, yeah? So you might recall a functionality at the file system level, access-based enumeration. Hands up who's using that in the file system. I saw a few hands, and that basically means that you will only be shown the files in a list of a directory that you have at least read access to. If you don't have read access, you won't see that that file even exists, because the file name could already, be hinting you at interesting information, whatnot. Yeah. Sometimes the file name itself is data that's worthwhile to collect. Yeah. Same here. Yeah. That other information. Oh, these objects exist, and even a domain admin might look like that, like an unknown object, and that capability is also available for Active Directory, to only list the objects that you have at least actually list object permissions to, but it's a functionality you need to enable in the directory. So by default, when you have the read permission in your Active Directory, it's actually lying to you, because the UI, users and computers, at least, yeah, it only shows you list contents, read all permissions, read all properties, read permissions. There is actually another permission that's always granted when you grant read permissions, and that is list object. List content we saw, yeah, for authenticated users, yeah. Read permissions, list content, read property of something, and then list object. It's there, but it's not evaluated until you enable that through a forest-wide change in your config container. Yeah? So this is actually the DS heuristics settings directly on the directory services, Windows NT. Yeah? So configuration services, Windows NT, directory service. There's that DS heuristics object, or actually property of directory service, where you can enable the functionality that Active Directory will not even display those objects that you don't at least either list object permissions or read permissions on. Why isn't that enabled by default? Think back when Active Directory was created. Performance. All about performance. When you do that, when you enable that, you're telling the directory, please look at the access control of all objects before you return me the results. Yeah? So the domain controllers do need to do a bit more before they actually return something. For the majority of environments, everything is in memory anyways, yeah? So it's not like a big deal. You're going to get just as fast responses in your Active Directory as you did before. Let's have a look at what that looks like live. So let's see if we can enable that. I just got to see, I got to go, of course, here to my root machine. So here, and I hope you can actually read all of that. I think the room is small enough that I don't need to like zoom in. And I'm down here at that Windows NT container with the directory services object, and I go properties. And then there's that DS heuristics. And you saw, well, didn't really point it out, but I said it's 001 that you were supposed to set, meaning the third binary value needs to be set to 1. If there's other stuff, DS heuristics manages quite a few additional, let's say, features in your Active Directory, and you can enable it just like that. And now I have list object mode enabled. If I now go back to my environment as the normal user, it's not going to work by just clicking refresh. I have to close the users and computers interface and basically reopen that. And I think this one is the one that's going to the root. So let me just switch to the root and change domain. And next step is, first of all, you'll see when I go to my user objects here, still have to do something, that now in the permission, I'm obviously here the normal user. In the permissions of that user's container, here I'm the admin, yeah, so here I see everything, yeah, so not to be confused with that normal user. I think I better close that here too before I go and edit. Just a second there. Just forgot to reopen that here too. That's one of those things where ADSI, users and computers just needs that refresh. So, and now in the properties and security of the objects, let's go to advanced and look for my authenticated user. Read. I also have the list object capability. In this time, I'll leave that here because you need to have list object at the level of the container to see the container, but I'm going to take list contents away. And since I'm not having the permissions to read those other objects, what our guess is going to happen when I'm now switching back to that normal user. Yeah. So here again, I'm the admin. Nothing changes for me here. Nothing. Yeah. And when I switch back to my what's up here, to my user, and we are looking at the, might as well just switch it here. Change domain. What's our expectation of what we see? We only see those objects that actually we have some level, at least list object permissions to. And it also nicely shows you where you might still want to also change that permission. Like DNS admins is clearly an attack path. If you know who is the DNS admin, and often not a well-protected account because it's not counting as one protected through SD-prop. So nicely and easily basically attacked. Okay, that's all I wanted to show on there. There's plenty of more things that we could do here, you know, like hiding DNS admins also, but we don't have the time for all of that. Let's get back here. This is what you've just seen, that besides list contents and read all properties, we now have that list object capability. And so I could also use that for filtering out a single. Actually, I didn't really show you to utilize that. Let me actually, for the sake of the demo, it's probably not bad to just go to our DNS admins, have a look at those, and security, and go to advanced. Has to be this view, and take it out. I'm going to leave everything else on that object like it is, but I'm just going to take the list object out. Typically, I would actually wipe out the whole authenticated user permission, set apply, might as well say okay, but that should be enough for me. Refresh, here we go. Oh, I was switching between the different machines. There we go. Still take there. Now it actually has replicated to the other domain controller. You do no longer see the DNS admins, yeah? Because again, they've also changed. I took that list object permission away. That's the minimum permission that you need to have. Usually, it's the whole read permissions. Okay, so back to our basics. We've covered that we can control the single object visibility with that feature, very powerful. And the key thing is to combine it with the list content permission of the parent container. Yeah, because if that is taken away, then it enables or tells the system, well, you have to check all the other objects and the permissions. If you leave list content enabled, then it doesn't care. It just gives you everything. Yeah, so that's the key to making that work. And once you do that, then you have what we've just talked about before. Okay. So what do you think? Somebody could be a bad guy that's actually using this capability against you, hiding inside your directory to actually not let you see what they've done to your directory. Let's have a look at what that would look like. Here, yeah, great. I got 10 minutes. That works fine, sort of. So I've got my environment. This is here, and I gotta switch back to my. I'm just gonna close it. It's faster. Switch back to my child domain. And in my child domain, I've got a special OU where, wait a second, where did I put these guys? Gotta just find my own little thing that I wanted to, here it is, other OU, it's actually in the root, not in the chat, in the root. So here in the root, it's an OU, another sub-OU with a secret administrator in it, I can see it. I'm the admin, I can see that. Now I'm not going to muck around with switching to another, to the secret admin. I'm just going to be me right now and change the permissions on this object. I'm going to, this is as if I was the intruder. I'm going to grant the secret admin, full control, actually ownership of that OU, and I'm going to whip out the domain admins. And this, actually before I do that, sorry, it is important for you to see that right now in my domain admins members, I still see that secret admin. So it's sort of not that secret at this moment, yeah? Like I can see also that object. Now here, I'm going to say go, and wait a second, was I too fast just now? Just me, let me do that again. Properties. I'm just going to rip it out here. That's good enough for us. And
we're not.
Huh?
We're not.
Or not exactly. Wait a second. I still am the domain admin, but. That's funny.
Well, you're the owner of the office.
Yeah, exactly. I had changed that too early. Sorry for that. And of course, because I am the domain admin, I can undo that again. Yeah, exactly. And apply and whip this guy out afterwards. Oh, come on. Yeah, I just done it slightly in a wrong order. Hopefully, it doesn't let me down. Now, yeah, exactly. I can remove this, and I can still, if I was, the bad guy, I could still also grant myself those permissions to be the owner. This is where I wanted to be. Come on, what is it? Giving me the creeps right now, but. Okay, let me just skip the owner here. This actually, I'm overlooking something that I'm not seeing right now, so let's leave the domain admins on there and rip them out here after granting myself that permission again. It's important for me to rip myself out because otherwise you don't see, so let's leave it like this. You don't see the benefit of finding these hidden objects. That's exactly it. These guys are now hidden objects. They're no longer there. The intruders trying to hide. They of course would do this with a script and wouldn't fail like I did with the UI just now. And the intruder is fully hiding from you, including find out why that worked from the memberships of the domain admins. You would think that object is still in there, but I'm actually granting him through the primary group. And the UI, of course, is enumerating that primary group here in here. And how do I now find that is a problem? Well, that is where a free tool from us comes in, dsdetect, yeah? Because you might not be able to see it through LDAP, but through replication APIs, you can still enumerate objects in your directory. And that's exactly what dsdetect does. Free tool, you can download it from our website, and it's basically scanning the Active Directory for exactly those suspect objects. We're enabling the sync permissions, and then it directly points me, oops, you've got some objects that you as the admin don't have read permissions to, something not okay in your environment. We use this all the time in breach response to find stuff where some intruder might have hidden themselves. Yeah. So of course I can then go to the objects just like I did now, and then grant myself the permissions again. I'll skip that part. Yeah. Okay, and we've just looked at all of this. It's in the slides. You can see that later. So let me just skip this because we've basically gone through that. You re-grant the domain administrator permissions and you rip out that other guy and all is good. So I don't have that much time anymore, but let me highlight a few things, and we do have some more minutes in the break if this is of interest to you. Permission property sets. I knew this is gonna get too long. This is about going down to the attribute level. We've talked about objects right now, but you can also hide data down to the attribute level. One thing that most of you might know about is the conditional attribute bit. That's only possible to be used by a few attributes because all of the base schema attributes cannot be hidden this way. So you typically only use it like for BitLocker keys or lapsed password. That's where conditional attributes are used. So you've got roughly 1,500 attributes in your classic Active Directory. 90% of them you can't basically hide that way. What people don't realize is, remember this screen from before? All these default permissions that are being granted to a user, those are permission property sets. And let's have a quick look at what a permission property set actually is. This thing is pointing to a rights GUID from a control access right that then points to whatever attributes are listed in the schema with that same attribute security GUID. That is basically making the bind between that permission and then the list of attributes. Anyone want to take a guess how many attributes are in personal information without exchange? 10, 20? Anybody?
Yes, hundreds.
It's not hundreds, but it's 71 just in that one. Yeah, and there's plenty of attributes that we grant, and exchange adds another 100 to that property set. Yeah, so if you have exchange in the environment, it's even more. Now the funny thing is, there's also, I'm actually looking at the self permission here, so I'm actually even getting write permission as the user to all of these objects. I'm also getting write permissions to, remember this, read phone and mail options. That's also another cool one, because if you look into this, I'm gonna skip this a bit because it's, let's say, there's a relationship between that rights GUID, let's have a quick look here, between that rights GUID and the way that you need to do the LDAP query to find the attribute security GUID. You need to switch it around a bit, of course, typically done with a script or through AD-Find from Joe Richards. Basically does that formatting for you, and then you can create nice lists and actually, through script, figure out what is actually belonging to these sets. Once you do that, you get a lovely table that I've created here. And what I'm highlighting now are those default permissions that we looked at before. It's 130 attributes that a user, any user, authenticated user can read. And remember that the self account actually had the permission to read and write phone and mail attributes. What does that mean? There's nothing in it. The permission means nothing. It's like an empty permission. It basically means that probably caused a lot of confusion for many mail administrators over the years. Yeah, like this is not working. Well, nothing is actually being granted here. Yeah, so if we have a look at that huge list, we can of course then also take something out of that permission property set. I'm going to do this fairly quickly. I'm not going to do the demo for that, but basically, of course, because it's editable, you can rip out that particular property from that property set, the attribute, yeah, just in the schema. Yeah. So that's what I'm doing here. I've basically ripped out the info attribute. Here it's not yet ripped out. This is the normal user. I can see this very secret data. If you had secret data, and I'm telling you, lots of companies have sensitive information that at least the intruder shouldn't be able to read. Applications might need it. Your average user also doesn't need to read it, but you can't easily get it out of your Active Directory. But I've seen social security numbers in there. I've seen employee information, let's say that's being used as input for other apps that is sensitive in nature. Do you want everybody to be able to read that? And you have to keep in mind that's editable. I'm just going to rip out in the comment and info, that is basically that attribute. I'm just going to clear it. Yeah, clear it, rip it out to not set. Ideally, you copy that first so you can easily undo it. This is a schema change, of course, for the whole forest, but easily undoable. And once I now redo that, I can no longer see that information immediately. No, how should I say? No permission change on the actual objects required. No react-link required. This is instant. Yeah, that is the rules of this. I'm gonna skip that because we're literally at the end of our session here. But the important thing is this is doable, and you can make that change without a high risk in your environment. Big thing. I mean, any change that you do, you want to monitor, and of course, any change that you do, you want to test. Yeah. So Active Directory security can be a game changer in making it harder for your intruders to do reconnaissance in your environment. But of course, very important warning: you don't just go there and whack out all sorts of ACLs. Unless you have a product, of course, that can undo that, but that's a different story. It's doable. That's the way that you can become more safe. And our time is basically up, but I think we still have a few minutes for questions if there are a few. I am giving you some other additional links to check out when you get these slides later. And this is actually a cool one too, written by our Darren, for hiding whole group policies inside other group policies. Yeah, so stuff to do. Okay, cool. Thanks a lot for being here. Been a pleasure.